which I think I've read, but I appreciate this anyway. So, yeah. All right. Okay, folks. 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 Hello, everybody. Let's resume. We actually only have we have less than 45 minutes left in the room now. So I wanted to do some Q&As, and I think everybody else wants to do some Q&As. So even though few people have not come back, I think, but we'll get started with that anyway because they're often of great benefit to everyone. Before I start with that, though, I want to remind everybody about our dinner thing. We have looked around and found a restaurant that we think offers a nice, reasonable, good-looking meal nearby, and it's a place called Hodel's. Doreen has maps to the place at the book table there. It's very simple and very straightforward, and it's about a 3-4 minute drive from here at most, I think. They said 6. Did you say? Yeah, okay. I mean, it's very simple, and we'd be delighted to have everybody come and eat. Everybody's got to eat, right? So,
I don't.
No.
I'm a libertarian. I don't need it. I just need
Oh well, all right. In that case, you're doing well. All right. Anyway, so definitely stop by and see Doreen and get a copy of the map as you're getting those books that you're going to take home and hand out to people. Okay? All right, Q&As. Open field, try and keep questions on point, and I may be brief with the answer, but just, work with me. There will be an interest here in getting to as many people's questions as possible and or focusing on stuff that will be of broadest interest to most people, which is kind of the object of the exercise. So, yeah, we'll start back there.
Earlier, you and I talked about the OCC and their admission.
The Office of Chief Counsel, IRS Office of Chief Counsel, that's their legal department, yeah.
Their admission of their flimsy ground that they were standing on with the frivolous penalty in
Yes.
One that was brought before the court, and they decided that they were going to.
Yes, they conceded they couldn't defend that. Yes.
We're not going to defend that. And I understand when they're confronted with truth that's what they better do is back off. But by the same token, they still send these.
Yeah. Okay. So what are frivolous penalty forms all about? That's a very good question and of great interest. The system has an interest in suppressing CtC. Okay, we talked about that in the first part of the program a lot. They're very, very dedicated at suppressing CtC. They've been trying to suppress it from the day the book was published, and going to enormous lengths of corruption in regard to what was done to me and later to Doreen as well. So that's their focus. Frivolous return penalties are a way of trying to scare the population, trying to create this sense that, these returns have to, the IRS has to be disputing these returns, and because it's issuing these frivolous penalties, right? Well, the frivolous penalties are a hoax. They're based on this argument 44 nonsense, the fake list. Argument 44 in the actual list. The actual argument 44 is a position involving the establishment of a corporation's sole, and the argument that your income is exempt from tax because it is a component of a religious institution. That's what argument 44 is on the actual official Secretary of Treasury's list of frivolous positions. In the case of CtC filings, reference will be made to argument 44 as being the justification for the frivolous assertion. Argument 44 appears on a fake list and is just a description of a typical CtC filing. It doesn't list a position at all. It just describes a typical CtC filing. And the IRS just has created this fake list in order to create a hoax penalty that people who don't get into the weeds on this stuff and don't actually look to see the details, see what argument 44 really is, imagine is a penalty being levied on somebody just for filing a CtC return, as though they really could do that. It is just a hoax. So the reason they do it is to create this fear. But at the same time, a frivolous return penalty presentation or assertion, what you get on a Form 3176 or a C or a 3175C, or there are a couple of other forms in which the frivolous thing gets asserted. It's an invitation. It's an allegation. It's an allegation very much like a W-2, in which somebody is saying, except that it's one that's unsworn, whereas W-2 is actually sworn. It's saying, we're proposing that your return qualifies for a penalty. What do you say? And that's right. It's to be answered with just a disagreement. It's to be answered with an affidavit saying, no, a frivolous return penalty applies if this is true and this is true and this is true, and in my case, this other thing is true and this other thing is true and this other thing is true. And that's it. And generally speaking, when those assertions are answered in that fashion, that's the end of the story. But that's why they're made. It's perspective. It's a shot in the dark. It's, hey, maybe this will work. Maybe we'll be able to end up with a rational, defensible justification for keeping $5,000, even though we had to give this guy back 15 grand, for the filing that he made, and we did. We gave him back the 15 grand. We may still be able to nick him for 5 grand by trying this other thing if it works. If he fails to respond, and then we, continue along with it, and it doesn't end up going into court, and, if a bunch of things fall our way, we'll end up with 5 grand that we wouldn't otherwise have. That's all it is. Okay?
They're using argument 44. Besides this fake list, they're like in my response to my tax court petition.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I said, right? Argument 44, relates to the 501c3 attribution. And then he said, denied. Alleges argument 44 references the frivolous position respondent identified to the Internal Revenue Manual section 252510, which falls under the frivolous income category.
So this is the answer that the IRS is making to you. That doesn't make it true. That just makes it an answer.
Right.
And that's all it is. And if you're in a tax court situation in which that's at play. By the way, did you determine that they are alleging argument 44 in your case?
Well, there's a form. The only thing that says argument 44 is this form 8270.
And you got a copy of the one that is
Yeah.
done? Well, then that's what they're relying on.
Right.
And did you file a return relating to the corporation sole and a religious thing?
No.
Well, then they're full of shit.
Yeah,
Sorry about that.
The determination, they don't even mention argument 44.
That doesn't.
1E and 22 whatever. So which I never saw until they actually issued the notice.
Okay, there's a word about this. If the frivolous return penalty requires a signed approval form, which is Form 8278, in order to be valid. If it doesn't show up on an 8278, it doesn't exist as far as the system is concerned. They can argue all they want later. Well, okay, maybe the argument 44 is bogus, but it falls under this, this, and this. Then show me the 8278 where it's signed off. I'm making that assertion, because otherwise you got nothing. Now, I'm not an attorney, and I'm not giving legal advice to you,
Right.
but I'm telling you that from what I have seen in the law, and what I've seen in practice, and in fact, one of the victories, conceded victories that I mentioned to you that took place earlier this summer, where the IRS OCC, the same people who answered your thing with that nonsense, conceded that they could not defend the penalties. It was exactly that case where when push came to shove, they had to acknowledge the argument 44 thing was bogus, but it'll qualify under this and this, and they tried to do that, and the litigant did not stand down and pointed out that you can't do that. You don't have anything. You don't have any backing for that assertion, and they said, okay, fine, we're done.
Right.
So
if you have a frivolous return penalty and they file a lien, I had that released. That means that the original return or amended return is not frivolous and therefore should be processed as filed.
Well, It wasn't frivolous to begin with, was it? I mean, did it qualify for frivolous? That's not something that's determined by whether or not they send out a, hey, we're going to ask if you're going to deny that your return is frivolous. They can, anybody can make an assertion like that. You can send them a bill saying, I think you guys owe me $20,000, just for nothing. I mean, just because it seems to me that under the law, I'm a citizen of wherever, and the way I read the law, you guys have to pay me $20,000. You can send that to them. That doesn't make them obliged to do anything. It doesn't make it true. It just anybody can send something like that. The fact that it's the federal government sending it or the IRS sending it or whatever doesn't make it any different or more valid than if you sent it. That's part of the mystique that that I'm hoping is overcome when you read CtC. There is not a relationship of servant and served in that way, where they can dictate things, they can do things like that, and it's different from if you do it. It's not the way it works. That's why they work with subterfuges the way they do. That's why they were. If it were the way they want you to imagine it, they wouldn't be asking you to sign a 1040 in the first place. They'd be sending you a bill, just like the how do you get your property taxes? How do you get your property taxes? They send you an invoice. That's it. They don't ask you to sign anything and declare it. They send you an invoice. And that's how it would be if they could do it that way. If they could do the frivolous thing that way, they wouldn't tell you, well, we think your return is frivolous, and you have 30 days to to change your testimony. Do everybody think about what that's all about? They're asking you to change your testimony to something that suits them better. Why would they do that ever? Let me get Wayne first, and I'll come back to you, Dana. Go ahead, Wayne.
Pete, how do you address property tax?
I don't. Property tax is it's a whole different.
There are gurus who do. Jack Smith, for one.
But it's not relevant to this conversation.
No,
So
that's fine.
yeah. So Dana.
So falling just back to the frivolous thing, if there is an assertion of frivolous, at that point you do a Freedom of Information Act to get that.
No. The initial assertion, it's just an invitation to you to stand silent and let it stand as asserted.
Oh, okay.
So the first thing is to respond to that and to rebut the proposed frivolous character of your return.
Basically.
I'm sorry?
Just to say essentially no.
Well, if you go to Lost Horizons and go to the frivolous return page, there's an affidavit template that is a suggestion for an approach to take. Go ahead, Richard.
Peter, is there a timely requirement to do that rebuttal?
There is. A lot of the time limit stuff is very arguably invalid. Somebody can't make you do a response in a certain amount of time unless you're already engaged in a legal battle with them and under a court's control, in which case there may be some time limits that matter. But in order to save having to argue over minutia, such as we told him he had 30 days and he didn't file that response until day 33. Why have to argue about that crap? There is a 30-day figure that is put into those assertions, and you might as well respond within the 30 days. You can point out that the 30-day thing only applies to a frivolous submission penalty. It doesn't apply to a frivolous return penalty under the law. And the very fact that they're offering it, so to speak, proves that they're making it up as they go along, because the 30-day thing does not apply to a frivolous return penalty. So
Never tell you what's wrong in the.
well, it doesn't apply. The law says that the only place that a 30-day back off thing is available to somebody is for a frivolous submission, which is a request for a due process hearing of one kind or another under frivolous grounds. That's the only place you can get the 30-day window. They offer it to CtC return filers, and it's simply an admission that we're asserting that it's a frivolous return penalty is bogus. It doesn't that 30-day window does not apply to return penalties. So But, use the 30 days anyway, just so that there's no argument ever about that point. So that because what will happen if you end up in a legal contest with these people, they try to clutter the landscape with minutia and crap. They try to make everything hard to see. That's their object. They want you to have to use up all of your page count when you're responding or briefing or whatever, with having to explain or undo all the little lies and the crap that they threw on the ground in the first place. That's what they rely on, because they don't have arguments to make. They're not going to produce any data. They're not going to produce any evidence, and they're going to clutter the ground up and just hope to kind of weary all sides down into something. So don't give them opportunities like that. It's just it's a silly thing to leave open a chance for having to argue about the 30-day nonsense. Answer within 30 days. There also is in the IRS, in their own literature, their own manual, a thing that says that if a frivolous assertion is not responded to, then we get to go into the automated collections system with the thing, and they want that to happen, because then nobody is taking responsibility for anything that happens, and there's a whole different demeanor when it's the automated collections thing, because it literally is automated. It's just a machine that'll just send out notices, and it'll send out notices of levy and eventually notices of final intent to levy. I'm sorry?
Even if you do respond timely, because that's what they did to me. I still went into the automated.
Well, and probably they allege that you didn't respond.
Yeah.
And it might even say that on that 8278. Did you look? It does say that you didn't respond.
I have
You can prove that you did.
From FOIA of my response.
You can prove yeah. So you can prove that you responded timely.
Yeah.
Then you will win. You will win. Don't have any doubt about it. You will win. No, I'm telling you. I mean, I can't make guarantees, of course. They are evil, but they're now losing, and they're now losing on a repeated basis. And you have already described a perfect situation. You have an 8278 that says argument 44. They've already abandoned that. They're already walking away from that and trying to argue, well, okay, that one didn't work, but we've got some other ones. They can't get away with that because they don't have 8278s that say them. They have to have those approval forms. So even if your return really were frivolous, if they don't have an 8278 for it, they can't collect the penalty. And you now have the other thing where they've lied about you having responded, so they shuffled you into the automated return program where they can get to do things without oversight and in fact without the approval process. That's one of the reasons why they try and do that. And you can prove that they're lying about that. You're going to win. I mean, again, I'm not gonna bet you $1 million that you're going to win, but you got a very, very solid situation there. Very solid. Don't be fretting about it. Be excited about it. It's a great opportunity. Yeah, go ahead.
So in that case, what kind of form should we be getting from our Freedom of Information Act? So
you want 8278, you want 12775s, you want tax mod A's. Yeah. The purpose of the tax mod A's is just because it's another place where argument 44 can show up.
All right.
That's really all there is to that.
And if we don't give those anymore.
Yes, they do. You have to walk in personally and get them. When CtC people started doing these Freedom of Information Acts for these internal documents, after a little while, to begin with, everybody just got them from the FOIA requests. But then they cottoned on to what was going on and realized that this was a problem for them. And so they started getting very balky about sending these things out. The disclosure officers got very balky about sending these things out in response to FOIA requests. And so people had to switch to walking personally into the nearest TAC and right over the counter, I want these documents. Everybody who has done that, to my knowledge, so far, has received the documents and walked out with them.
They told me we don't even have anything for that year.
Then that's the answer. Then all you need to do, that's the answer. They don't have anything. That's great. That means that nobody approved the penalty.
Nothing for that. Nothing. Not the date. Nothing.
Then nobody has approved. Then nobody has approved the penalty. If they're saying you're liable for a frivolous return penalty, and they don't have any documentation even of the return, much less of the penalty, then there's no penalty.
Have them stamp that statement.
Exactly.
Tell them, say,
exactly. And frankly, And frankly, if any of you,
You're harassing me
So
now.
I gotta go back.
if any of you are making a personal trip into a TAC for this purpose, it would be great to have written beforehand no documents exist responsive to this request thing, signed, so-and-so on such and such a date. Bring a witness with you. Bring a witness because they'll refuse to sign. They'll refuse to sign that.
Yeah, I gotta wait 3 weeks.
They will refuse to sign that. You bring a witness in and have them say it in the witness's presence, and then say, "Would you sign this, please?" No, no way. Okay, whatever. So-and-so heard you just say it. So,
We'll be in court.
Yeah, I gotta have a
Was,
because seriously, that's a win. That's a win. Yeah.
So, go back to tax year 2015 situation. So I've gotten the letter 3219, which is the,
That's a notice of deficiency. 3219 is a notice of deficiency.
yes, okay, signed by Christine L. Davis.
No, or not, as the case may be.
Um,
There's a signature stamp that says Christine L. Davis on it. Yeah.
okay. So anyway, I'm trying to understand this process, because this is the part of the document where I file a petition to the tax court. I have never done this. It's always been in response to CP 15, 75, et cetera. I'm just hoping to get some information about how to do this, how to.
Okay.
respond.
And what you really need to do at this point, and this is, one of the things about the whole thing, you got to get access to the restricted pages on the site, which deal specifically with these legal contest stuff. And in order to do that, you have to give me a video. So you send a qualifying video, and I will give you access to that material. Graham.
So I have two parts. So I got a frivolous filing penalty. They're sending me some CP 504s, a couple in a row.
Mhm. But not a final notice to
Not a
levy yet?
final notice, no.
Okay, so you don't have an opportunity for an appeals hearing,
And so-
which is the place where that will probably end.
Okay, right. And so there's that, and then I just got the notice of deficiency, or supposed notice. And so I have the time to file for a petition to the tax court. Would it be, or can I even move that to a federal court and ask for a refund claim?
That's an interesting question. Several people have raised it recently because these very bogus notices of deficiency, there's suddenly a rash of these things in play. And I can tell from what several people have said here that, you guys are being targeted with these things. Some of them are absolutely ridiculous. I mean, you all saw the 0 notice of deficiency thing I posted recently. That's not an unusual example now. I could post several others that I just haven't been able to do much posting lately. In fact, somebody else here had an example themselves of it. Who was telling me about a notice of deficiency where they were trying to combine stuff from one year into a different year's
yeah,
notice.
they took this came one out of my frivolous return and put it into a notice of deficiency for another year.
A very different year. And so there's some flailing about going on here. Some people have gotten notices of deficiency for returns like a month and a half after they filed their return. That's a process that has to take like a year or two before they get to the point of a notice of deficiency if it's done normally and legitimately. But so that is happening, and the is the frivolous thing the focus of the notice of deficiency?
No, in fact, they don't even mention it.
Okay.
They just said, we changed your information return, or we changed your return.
So what you got? Did you actually get a notice of deficiency, or did you get a
So
proposal,
this is
an
your-
adjustment,
this is
adjusted?
your statutory notice of deficiency. You have 90 days to petition the tax court. They unfroze the federal withholding portion that was previously frozen, which probably triggered the notice, and they just used that in the record or their examination report,
Mhm.
which they gave me 30 days to respond to, and I did that.
Mhm.
Then they sent the statutory notice of deficiency
Okay.
with
So-
a copy of the examination report.
So they're saying we couldn't intimidate you into collapsing when we did this audit nonsense, and so now we're kicking it upstairs to the tax court to
So you
to see what
recommend
happens.
Just take it straight to tax court instead of trying to.
Well, okay, yeah, that was where the question
Right.
was to go. Yeah, here's the thing with my answer to other people that have had that same question, because as I said, this has now come up a few times, is I suspect that the quick sending of a notice of deficiency, in some of these cases, like I said, that have been really fast, is to preempt a federal district court from imagining that it has that you have standing to go into them, because there's already an administrative court proceeding underway. And so, in other words, the federal court will say, well, yeah, okay, sure, under normal circumstances, we could hear your refund case, but you have to finish the administrative thing first.
Yeah.
But that isn't to say that filing the suit in federal district court isn't the right thing to do, because I think that it is. Again, I'm not an attorney, not giving legal advice to anybody. But I think that is the proper thing to do. Let the court say, well, no, they're fine, but no, until the other thing is resolved. Let them say that. What you don't want to do is you don't want to lose your window of opportunity. You only get 2 years in order to file that refund suit, and they'll tie you up in tax court for 2.5 years. So if you wait until then, you'll be too late to go in and file your refund suit.
I wouldn't even mention in my original complaint for the refund the tax court issue. I would just file the.
Absolutely, and let the other side say, oh well, we've got this gentleman in tax court, so Your Honor, we have to wait till that plays out, but you don't want to foreclose the opportunity.
Yeah,
So
foot in the door
yeah,
before that
exactly.
time.
So anybody else, sir?
Kind of tell you a little bit about 2006 for me. I filed a regular CtC return. I believe it was done properly from everything I've heard.
Okay.
And I saw it on the website as, where's my tax return? You see, oh, it's ready, it's coming. And all of a sudden it dropped off and it says they're still thinking about it.
Okay.
So then I get a note that says,
When was this all, by the way?
2006, 2007 or so.
So it was timely. It was
Yeah, it was
back then. Okay.
And then they said, it is, we don't have your tax return. Could you please give us another copy? We can't find your tax return.
Mm-hmm.
So I sent them another copy and labeled it, this is a copy of the return sent on this date. Nothing happened. Then I get a notice that says, we demand you send in a tax return. So I said, okay, here's a copy of the one I sent in this date. I did send in the return, please process.
Okay.
They didn't process. I got it one more time, and I took it to Dana Rohrabacher, my congressman. I said, do you know anybody at the IRS? Could you just send them a copy of this? Because they keep telling me they don't receive it. So it went through his fingers, it went on. Then I get a letter that says, oh, we got your tax return on A, B, C, and D dates. We've determined that it's frivolous.
And we're going to file a penalty for all 4 times?
Penalty for my wife and myself 4 times, $40,000 for one tax return.
Okay, well, that by itself shows that the assertion of the penalties is completely made up and bogus.
Yeah.
Because-
To go one step further, my boss at the television station where I work, he says, well, you've been sharing all this information with me. We'll just file a W-3 that says that this is true and correct. Yeah. So he filed the W-3, and they never came after me for any more taxes, which they were trying to assert. They never gave me a refund that I was trying to claim, but they did leave the $40,000 there.
Okay.
So that's why I wrote the book on the penalty scam, because I'm as mad as a centipede on a hot rock. You know how it feels?
Yeah, right. Yeah, and rightly so. But they do give their hand away by just the very fact that they're trying to assert multiple penalties. Even if your return qualified for a penalty, it can't qualify for more than one. I mean, it could, if it's a joint return, it could qualify one for you and one for your wife, but can't qualify for more and the fact that they're trying to do that is an effort to intimidate. It's just an effort to build a big number, and and function as trade bait. Where they're going to try and negotiate something about it, or just to intimidate you outright. And so make use of that fact. What's the status of that right now?
Well, I had to pay it to make sure my wife would survive. She was,
ouch.
2 open heart surgeries and cancer surgeries, and just couldn't take the pressure.
So you paid
I
it.
took it off and said, okay, we'll go to tax court on at least some of it. We went to tax court, and they agreed with everything that was in my petition, and said, okay, but we fine for the responded anyway. I mean,
When was that?
crazy business.
When did that tax court hearing take place?
I don't remember the exact year now. Probably
just roughly.
2008 or so.
Huh. Well, it's a shame. Early that far back, some of the tools that are available now for dealing with the frivolous things were not available, and that's just an unfortunate reality. So, but I'm sorry to hear that it went that way for you. They were just making it up as they go along. All right, we're going to go take one more question. It's 10 to 6 right now, and we do need to clear the room, which is going to involve a little bit of equipment breakdown for me and some other things. So we'll take one more question, and then, I know we already had a hand up. So, yeah.
I was just going to ask, didn't they do the same thing to the Waltners, and more recently?
No, actually, well, for one thing, the Waltners case is not a finished product yet. It's in the Court of Appeals, and oral arguments are being heard on January 10th. In the Waltners case, a fascinating case. This was one in which forgeries were actually created by the IRS Office of Chief Counsel and a couple of people in the IRS themselves, verified by a forensic document examiner, certified forensic document examiner. That's one of the issues that's in the appellate court right now in the Ninth Circuit in that case. The government is struggling to avoid the entire appellate proceedings by arguing that the filing of the appeal brief was a day late. And they're arguing under a mailbox rule that the Ninth Circuit has already ruled in the Waltners' favor in a previous case in which the same issue was being argued. So that'll be the first item on the agenda for the oral arguments, and there's every reason to expect that that'll be a no-brainer. And then they will get to the merits of the issue. It's going to be a fascinating case, and Sarah Waltner has made an excellent argument, and I'm expecting good things from that case when all is said and done. The previous case that they had been involved with in the Court of Claims, in which they got an adverse ruling, the Court of Claims, the government made the argument, the Court of Claims bought the argument that the Waltners' filing was insincere. So it was not a ruling on the merits, it was a ruling on the basis of complete nonsense. The Court of Claims actually even argued that 0 was not a number and could not appear on a tax return. In complete defiance of an awful lot of jurisprudence and pure common sense as well. So it was, the fact is there is corruption, opposed to the thing. I mean, I had my own situation. The jury wasn't allowed to see the statutory language defining wages because it was significant to the case, and instead they were given substitutes for those statutes written by the prosecutor. There are corrupt judges, and they do corrupt things, and they're struggling to defend this gravy train. But we're in a mode now where we've begun to win, even on this level, even in these judicial contests, and that's how it's going to be. All right. With that, I'm going to thank everybody for being here. It means a lot to me. I am going to reiterate about the dinner gathering and remind everyone Doreen has maps to the venue over at the book table. And I'm going to start breaking down my stuff here. So I hope to see you all at Hodel's with us. Yeah.